Hi, lovely friends. Welcome to the astrological new year 2023. This video is going to focus on some of the major trends and themes happening for each of the rising signs based on the major transits coming this year. I'm going to move through this fairly quickly, I hope. So let's begin with Aries rising. For you guys, you will have this new moon in the house of the self, of identity, physical vitality, personality, and with Jupiter moving through your first house until May the 17th, when it moves into your second house, there's going to be a continued emphasis on courageous assertion, expanding your sense of self, bringing your identity out into the world in ways that feel quite optimistic and expansive. There's going to be also more of an emphasis on you and yourself and how you are in the world from May, I beg your pardon, from the 18th of July, when the nodes move North Node into your house of the self and South Node into the house of relationships, which reduces the emphasis on relationships or focuses attention on what needs to be cut away or eliminated in order for relationships to really be for growth to occur, for relationships to be spiritually satisfying, etc. There's likely to be breakthroughs and improvement in finances, innovation, some really optimistic good fortune hopefully coming in money, finances, your skills and your self-worth from May, 17th of May onwards. There's also with Saturn in Pisces in your 12th house, there's a focus on working with unconscious patterns, with blind spots and potentially addictions, and doing some healing work, really coming face to face with some of the things that might be undermining you in the area of what we're unaware of, basically, and setting up good structures, healthy boundaries, systems for working through those kinds of things, but also the possibility for developing a creative vision in solitude. Also with Mars moving into Cancer at the end of March, there could be some challenges around family, home, property, maybe even mothers. This will seem worse than it is. That's something to keep in mind. But the question we want to ask ourselves is, what kinds of courageous protective action do we need to take to nurture growth and to make sure that those in our family are home, that those in our family are safe and that we are safe and protected. There's also a big process of change and reorientation, reversals and rebirth processes, death and rebirth processes happening in the realm of creativity, children, romance and pleasure, that'll be going through a long process of placing emphasis on those kind of themes. And then doing some reworking and reorientation from June through to October, with the backtracking and reversals period happening from 24th of August to the 5th of September. There's also an easing up of intensity in career and a focusing of one's power in society, how we find our power in networks, friendships, and with allies, and by being more authentically ourselves. So that is it in a nutshell for you, Aries. Wishing you the very, very best this year. All right, Taurus rising. For you, the areas of focus this year are on continued expansion and emphasis on change, innovation, breakthroughs, liberation, optimistic expansion, self-identity, physical vitality, health, personality, and appearance. There's going to be an easing up of spiritual lessons in relationships that have involved some loss and endings. So that will hopefully feel much better from July. There's also should be an easing up of money matters when Mars moves out of Gemini in your second house, but it places an emphasis on emotional communication, how you do communication in that emotional sphere, and what actions need to be taken to ensure that you're safe and that others are not impacted by reactivity in communication. It can also bring up some challenges in that area. And again, the reminder is that things may seem worse than they are. There is also a lot of growth and healing will be continuing with a growing emphasis placed on blind spots and the unconscious, and where we tend to self-sabotage in our lives, and really doing some healing in relation to those kinds of themes, and recognizing that you have the right to be here, and that some of those undermining patterns and habits that are self-sabotaging might be coming from this idea that you don't have the right to be. So there's some healing that continues in that area for you this year when the nodes move into your 12th house. There are also going to be some strong emphasis on home and family, possibly with mothers, from June until October, when Venus retrogrades through Leo in your 4th house. And that can bring some reversals and some challenges, some need to reorient, to shed some layers. It can be quite challenging, but the outcome is a period of rebirth that happens through that process. And the thing we want to focus on is, how do we love? How do we express love? How do we follow the heart in matters of family and home? There's also an emphasis on, from July as well, there's going to be an emphasis on work, day-to-day routines and health, and what needs to be eliminated, purified, or decreased in those areas in order for things to run more beautifully, more smoothly, more effectively, and to enhance relationships as they relate to those kinds of themes for you. There's also a strong shift in power dynamics into your career house. So there's going to be a focus for the next 20 years, but beginning this year and backtracking forward for you in relation to how you find your power in career, what needs to be revealed from the depths in order to realize that power, working with power dynamics, and finding a way to express yourself really authentically as who you are through career. With Saturn and Pisces in your 11th house, there could be some challenges and limitations regarding friendships and networks, but there's also the opportunity to develop better boundaries, healthy boundaries in friendships, seeking mature friendships that are really supportive and that support you in your vision, and possibly finding groups who share a common vision in relation to a cause that you really care about. So Taurus, they're some of the major themes for you this year, and I hope they're helpful to kind of orient yourself in relation to your own visions. Gemini rising, there should be an easing up of health and identity related challenges that you've been experiencing for the last 8 months, and hopefully some greater clarity around direction, hopes and dreams, and the ability to gain support from allies to assist you with what you're trying to achieve in the world. There should be a greater potential for breakthroughs and liberating shifts in relation to patterns and habits of self-undoing or addictions, patterns that undermine us. Also, the opportunity for some growth and expansion and innovation, some really positive opportunities in relation to developing a creative vision that you do in solitude. There should be a culmination of lessons in relation to work, conflict, health, and daily routines with the South Node moving out of your 6th house. It's been there since January 2022. And so it may have involved some loss or elimination in those kinds of areas, some letting go. And it might have focused your attention towards more spiritual ideals. And this is going to be moving into your 5th house of children, creativity, pleasure, sex, romance, etc. focusing your attention on what needs to be removed or eliminated in those areas in order for things to go more beautifully, to be better, to be more enjoyable and pleasurable, etc. There are some early challenges with money from the end of March until I think May, till May, that's right, with Mars moving into your second house of finances, skills, and self-worth. Things seem worse than they are, but the thing you want to be asking yourself is what kind of protective actions can you take to secure your finances and your self-worth, to make sure there is a safe space for your sense of self-esteem that isn't dependent on money being maybe a little bit tricky during that period. It's not going to last long. It's not as bad as it seems. But yes, how can you nourish and nurture a safe space in those kinds of situations? Expansion and opportunity in friendships as Jupiter moves through your 11th house in Aries, and with the North Node moving there from July, there's a real focus on allies, friendships who are supporting you to realize a creative vision. And a leveling up in career as Saturn moves into your 10th house in Pisces, which could lead to increased responsibilities and work. And it could feel a little bit more serious as you really kind of focus on delivering some kind of vision at that level of career. Healthy structures, boundaries, support systems that are going to allow you to work towards the realization of that. Hard work in career does produce lasting results eventually. That's something to keep in mind. There is a shifting in karmic intensity when Pluto moves out of your 8th house of karmic entanglements, other people's money and esteem, psychology, etc. Pluto is going to move out of that house and into your 9th house of higher education, higher thinking, philosophy, spirituality, travel, etc. And so as Pluto moves in here, it's placing an emphasis on how we find power in those areas, how we can find power in those areas by being more authentically ourselves and by really immersing ourselves in those kinds of higher minded thinking, broadened horizons, etc. There's also a rethinking of communications in relationships that'll be happening when Venus moves through your 3rd house from June until October. And that could involve some major shifts and changes, some creative learning in regard to community, communications, mind, and how you do communication, basically, that might involve some shedding of old ways and some reorientation. So I hope that helps for you, Gemini. Let's move on to Cancer rising. For you guys, the year begins initially with some challenges as Mars moves into your 1st house. Now, this may actually not be challenging for you. This could bring you a sense of really of motivated action to assert yourself in the world, but it could also be quite challenging because Mars is quite a vigorous and potentially aggressive planet, and Cancer is very, very sensitive. So just know that it's not long lasting, and things always seem worse when Mars is in Cancer. It's in its fall, and so it's exaggerated. It's not as bad as it seems. The things you want to ask yourself is, how can you take action? What kinds of action can you take to protect a vulnerable sense of self that's emerging? And what threats to that sense of self need to be cut away? What is not supporting that growth of identity and personality? Yes. So then there is also an increasing potential for breakthroughs and for liberating shifts and lovely opportunities in friendships and support from allies and who want to help you to achieve visions that are value aligned in the second half of the year when Jupiter moves into Taurus in your 11th house, really from May 19th. There's going to be an easing of intensity in relationships as Pluto moves out of your seventh house and moves into your eighth house. This could be a good time to see a counselor, actually. Pluto moves into Aquarius from the 23rd of March. So you may feel drawn to counseling and psychology in ways that allow you to be yourself more authentically, because Pluto reveals hidden things and it helps us find our power. It could also suggest that it's a powerful time for investments and other people's money over this period. It's a 20-year period. Pluto's going to be moving back and forward until the end of 2024. So there's going to be some backwardsing and forwarding as your relationships transform and you transform those areas of your psyche that are caught up in what people think about you and also how you can use your power. So there is also an easing of reactive mental patterns that might negatively impact your communication. Yes, I'm sorry, I think I'm getting a bit confused there. There is a culmination of lessons that have been in play since January 22 relating to romance, creativity, pleasure, children, and these may have involved some loss or letting go. And they might have also focus your attention towards this more spiritual approach to those things. And there should be a sense of relief in relation to these things in the second half of the year. There could be some challenges and reversals from the middle of the year, from June until October, as Venus moves through your second house of Leo. And she's going to retrograde from... she will be retrograding from 24th of August until the 5th of September. Now that could signify some reversals in income or money matters. That could feel a little bit challenging at the time, but they will turn around again. There will be a process of shedding what isn't working or what isn't needed, and then of kind of a rebirth and a reset that will come through that period. So just hang in there knowing that. And really focusing on the heart and being led by the heart in that regard. Hopefully that will help to develop self-esteem, connecting from the heart, not relying on self-esteem as supported by financial indicators, and also focusing on the development of creative talents. So also there is a continuing emphasis and a growing emphasis on career and asserting oneself courageously in career as Jupiter continues to move through your 10th house, but also the North Node is going to move into 10th house, and that will indicate the placement of eclipses for the next 18 months from July this year, which suggests there could be some really positive opportunities coming in career. And it might ask us also what we need to shed and eliminate and reduce in the context of home and family to that's needed in terms of finding a balance between career and family, and to find more beauty and connection in home and family relationships. So there is also going to be a more serious focus on higher education, spirituality, travel, publishing, those kinds of themes as Saturn moves into Pisces in your 9th house. So these are things you might want to be thinking about, and how you can create good structures, supports, boundaries, containers for developing intellectually in those areas, for getting the kind of education that will help you deliver on a long-term vision, for doing the kind of travel that is related to your creative or spiritual aspirations, etc. And, you know, it can be a little bit challenging, Saturn, wherever it is, but in Pisces and in your 9th house, it really places a strong, very powerful, quite beautiful emphasis, I think, on spiritual development. And it's a really nice placement for you, I think. So I think you'll be building something really interesting in that area that will have lasting results. Alrighty, so let's move on now to Leo rising. And let me advance my chart forward. All right, so from Mid-year, when Venus moves into Leo from June until October, and she will be retrograding from the 24th of August until 5th of September, you could experience some challenges at the level of personality, identity, health, vitality, etc. This could involve some reversals and some kind of deep thinking about what needs to be shed and eliminated, and how you want to reset and reorient moving forward, how you connect to yourself and the world through your heart. There could also be some initial challenges from March, the end of March, when Mars moves into your 10th house, your 12th house. Now, this should be done by May, but it focuses attention on the kinds of protective actions that need to be put in place in order to ensure that you are safe and that you don't succumb to the kinds of self-sabotaging actions that can cause you personal suffering and damage. With Mars being a planet related to action and courageous action, there's a possibility of being able to work with habits, patterns, addictions, etc., that are undermining us. And really to make sure that you are supporting yourself and others in your life who need protection. Things can seem much worse than they are. It can exacerbate mental health issues in ourselves or in others. The thing to keep in mind is that it is not as bad as it looks. That is guaranteed. And that some really powerful action can be taken in that area to provide safety and protection, to nurture new growth and new creative possibilities as well that you work on in solitude. There's also the increasing potential for breakthroughs and liberating shifts and opportunities in career this year, especially from May 17th, when Jupiter is going to move through your 10th house. That's very exciting. There could be an easing of intensity at the level of work and health issues and daily routines when Pluto moves out of your 6th house and into your 7th house. When it moves into your 7th house, and that is on the 23rd of March, right after the new moon, on the 22nd of March, Pluto will be moving backwards and forwards between your house of work and health issues and into your house of relationships, back and forward until 2024, late 2024. So the themes and the kind of culmination of the learning in those areas will be ongoing. But when Pluto moves into your relationship house, it's likely to indicate where you can find more power in relationships, how you want to experience power, what the nature of power dynamics are, how you can be yourself more authentically in relationships, and what needs to be transformed in order for you to do that. There is also a culmination of some lessons in relation to home and family that have been going on since January 22, potentially. And these may have involved some loss and some letting go, and it might have brought a more spiritual outlook. And there should be a real sense of relief when the South Node moves out of Scorpio and into your house of communication, which will focus your awareness on the things that need to be eliminated, eradicated, or decreased in the way that you communicate with the world. How you show up in communities, relationships with siblings, etc., and maybe developing a more spiritual approach to your day-to-day life, recognizing the sacred in the everyday. There's also a much more serious focus on psychology for you guys, and for karmic focus on karmic entanglements, responsibilities and obligations, your investments, your partner's money. And the focus is on developing healthy boundaries and structures. A great time to see a psychologist or a counselor to begin working on developing really healthy boundaries and structures that allow you to transform in order to achieve your vision, your higher vision of who you want to be in the world, how you want to show up, how you feel about how others feel about you. etc. What wants to be transformed? Saturn is working here very, very seriously. It's a lot of hard work, but it produces really positive, long-lasting results in the end. So that's something to keep in mind, Leos. All right, let's move on now to Virgo rising. All right, Virgo risings. Initially, you guys could have there's likely to be a continued expansion for you guys on obligations, responsibilities, other people's stuff, partners' money, investments, psychology, and transformation, how you assert yourself in those kinds of contexts. And there will be Jupiter is still moving through your 8th house, which is where this new moon is happening, and it will move into your 9th house, which rules travel, higher thinking, higher education, spirituality. And this is there will still be a focus on those 8th house themes when the North Node moves into your 8th house, which really places an emphasis on you and your psychology, what is in your subconscious, and also what you want to transform at the level of your karmic entanglements with other people, your obligations and responsibilities to others, also how you can work with other people's money potentially to expand in the world, basically. There is a more serious focus on relationships for the next 2.5 years with Saturn moving through your 7th house in Pisces. And this really asks what kinds of healthy boundaries are needing to be established in relationships, what kind of structures, containers, routines are going to help you build the vision of an ideal, a beautiful relationship. What is needed here? What needs to be worked on here? And that will bring up challenges, but also opportunities to really crystallize the vision of your relationship in future. There's going to be an easing of intensity in the area of children, creativity, pleasure, romance, and sex as Pluto moves out of your 5th house and into your 6th house. Now, this is going to focus your attention on what needs to be transformed at the level of work and day-to-day routines and health. What things will be revealed, no doubt, that will highlight what needs to be transformed, and the process of being yourself more authentically, being true to what your body needs, to what routines are going to help you be as healthy as you can be, and also to work as efficiently and as powerfully as you can. There could be some challenges from June until October. Well, not throughout that period of time. Actually, it's from August until 24th of August until 5th of September. Venus will be retrograding through your 12th house in Leo, but she'll be moving through that house from June until October, placing your emphasis on your the unconscious realm, the possibility of blind spots, of unconscious patterns and habits that we self-sabotage ourselves through, undermine ourselves. Also, it can show up as the people that in our lives, our work, our families who are struggling as well. And Leo focuses our attention on the heart as Venus moves through that sign, through your 12th house. During that period, she is going to be doing some shedding and stripping away, and there should be some reversals in the way that things seem to be going during that retrograde period. Things are likely to go backwards or to change direction. We'll go through a period of stripping and shedding, and then of reorientation and reemergence. So this is a really good time to focus on meditative practices, any kind of practice that really kind of you do in solitude and that helps to center you in the heart. And also creative practices can be very, very powerful for processing some of this stuff. You will be having Also, as I mentioned, you're going to be having this continued sort of emphasis on a higher learning, foreign cultures, philosophy, thinking, spirituality. Already, we have an emphasis there with Uranus moving through Taurus in your ninth house, with Venus in the initial phase moving through, sweetening that area up. And then also Jupiter is going to move in there from May 17th. Excuse me. And that should expand some of those areas, with possibility of higher education or of travel, etc. There should be an easing in the area of career as Mars moves out of your career house, and hopefully some clarification of ideas and of what you want to take action on, and just things feeling a little bit easier there. The emphasis will then shift to your 11th house of friends, networks, and allies, also your hopes and dreams. Now, Mars is going to move into your 11th house of Cancer at the end of March, and it'll stay there until May, and things could seem worse than they are when that happens. You may feel like there's a squashing of your hopes and dreams to some degree, or that there might be a falling away of friendships. Just things could feel challenging in that area. And the thing to keep in mind is what kinds of protective actions can you take to nurture friendships, to nurture your hopes and dreams, the things that you're wanting to action, knowing that the challenges in this area are not going to last, but there is a defensive, protective, courageous action that could be required to really provide a safe space for those things to grow. And I think that is the lot for you guys, Virgos. So best of luck for 2023, and I hope that some of that was helpful. All right, let's move on now to Libra. All right, so Libra, you guys are having the new moon in your 7th house, which places a continuing emphasis on expansion in relationships, of being able to assert yourself more authentically in relationships. When the nodes shift in July, there's going to be continued emphasis on the other, and on really courageously working towards the ideals of relationship that are important to you. There's going to be a lessened emphasis on the self, so it's more really focused on the other, and what kind of courageous actions need to be taken to support relationships. There will be a more serious focus on work and health and daily routines as Saturn has moved into Pisces in your 6th house, helping you to establish healthy boundaries, systems, support systems, containers, routines that allow you to really work towards some healing and a vision at work. It suggests that it will be hard work, but also that there's a very supportive environment to really do things differently, to be able to bring something forward that hasn't existed in that area before. There's going to be an easing of intensity at the level of family. And that is because Pluto is going to move out of your 4th house and into your 5th house. And so as it moves out of the area of family and home, and it's going to be moving backwards and forwards until the end of 2024, but it should ease up some of that intensity at that level of home, family, and property. Fingers crossed. As it moves into your 5th house of creativity, pleasure, romance, children, sex, it focuses our attention on what, where, and how can we find our power, and can we express ourselves more authentically in those areas in order to find our power. Pluto will reveal the things that are hidden from our view currently, and there is a process of transformation that will be going on in relation to those themes for the next 20 years, which begins now from the 23rd of March. There should be an easing up in the area of higher learning and spirituality, philosophy, ideas that you've been working on since August 2022, are coming to a greater clarity. those that emphasis, that the Martian emphasis is going to move into career from late March until May, and that could place some challenges in the area of career. As I've been saying for everyone, Mars in Cancer seems worse than it is. So it's not going to last for long, and it isn't as bad as it looks. But it does ask you to think about the kinds of protective actions that you can take in career to ensure that you are safe and secure, that others are safe and secure, that your career can be nurtured and supportive to you. What kinds of actions are going to help you to achieve that during periods of kind of a little bit of stress and potential conflict? What kinds of protective measures can you make and actions can you take to limit that, basically? And from June until October, Venus is going to be moving through your 11th house of friends, networks, and allies, really placing an emphasis on how you want to connect with people creatively, how you connect from the heart, and how you express yourself through those friendships, with a challenging period that'll be happening from the 24th of August until, I always forget what date it is, the 5th of September. When Venus will be retrograde. So that will involve some reversals or some backtracking in relation to friendships and networks and allies, where we'll be doing some reorienting and some resetting, some shedding of what doesn't work, what isn't quite right in the current context, and then a reset and rebirth that happens following those kind of insights. So there's also going to be hopefully an easing up of a feeling of losses in relation to money and finances, self-worth, and skills. That is going to happen in July, and hopefully things will feel a little bit easier when that happens. So yeah, wishing you the very, very best, Libra risings. And let's now have a look at Scorpio risings. All right, Scorpio, for you guys, this is going to, the astrological year kicks off with an emphasis on what is growing in the realm of work, health, daily routines, etc. Something is expanding here. Hopefully it is some really good new routines, some optimistic routines that allow you to be more energetic in your life and healthier, etc. When the North Node moves into your 6th house in July, it's going to place increased emphasis on this area and the focus on being really healthy, being vital, being active, etc., to reduce the possibility of illness. And also to be able to really kind of work dynamically in a way that's efficient and that uses your energy in the best possible way at work. There's a more serious focus on creativity and on children and pleasure, sex, romance, as Saturn moves into your 5th house, Pisces. Now, this could suggest that there's less of an emphasis on romance, etc. Saturn can feel like a bit of a no. But also Saturn is about discipline, boundaries, maturity, wisdom, and the routines that allow us to build something solid. So what this suggests to me is that there could be this very interesting period of working to develop a vision creatively, but also of establishing the kind of boundaries that are necessary for you to achieve the vision that you have in romance, relationships, sex, and with children, etc. There's going to be an easing of intensity in relation to your mind, communication, communities, siblings, neighbors, as Pluto moves out of your 3rd house and into the 4th house. Now that's going to happen all back and forward until the end of 2024. But when Pluto moves into your 4th house, it focuses your attention on what needs to be transformed at the realm of family, home, roots, ancestry. And this is, as Pluto moves in there, it is about transformation. It's about finding our power. It's a long transit. It will happen for 20 years. But this is really likely to reveal the things that are going to help us to find our power and to be more authentic in the context of authentic as ourselves in the context of home, family, and roots. There should be an easing up of maybe anxieties about what other people think of you. And also in relation to the partner's money, in relation to karmic entanglements, obligations, and responsibilities as Mars moves out of Gemini at the end of March and then into your 9th house. Now, this could place some stress in the areas of higher learning, education, philosophy, spirituality, travel, and publishing. So do be careful if you're traveling, be careful. But again, as I've said for everyone, Mars in Cancer seems a lot worse than it is. And what it's asking us to do is focus our attention on the kinds of courageous action we need to take to ensure that there is security and safety, and that whatever is emerging in this area is safe to do so, and that we're nourishing growth. We're taking protective, defensive action to ensure that something is safely able to thrive, basically. From June until October, Venus is going to be moving through your 10th house, Leo. And from the 24th of August until the 5th of September, Venus is going to be retrograde. Those dates don't sound quite right to me, but anyway, we'll work that out as we get further on in the year. So yes, Venus is going to retrograde through your 10th house of career, and that could suggest some reversals in career matters. Something that's been going forward in one direction might change direction. And that could feel quite challenging at the time. What it requires of us is a certain kind of stripping away of something that isn't working, a reorientation, and then a re-emergence that is fresh, that takes place as a result of that retrograde period. But it is focusing our attention very much as Venus moves through Leo on what we're wanting to create, express, and how we do so from the heart. And for you, that's really focused on the area of career. As the South Node moves out of your first house, there should also feel like a culmination of some big lessons that have been happening in relation to yourself, your identity, your vitality, your personality, and how you meet the world. With the South Node there since 2022, since goodness me, gosh, I can't even remember how long it's been there, ages, 18 months. It may have been bringing experiences of some shedding, some loss, some decrease, some elimination that's been happening in that area. It could have brought about some health issues, for example, or you could have been ridding yourself of some patterns and habits that have been damaging your health, for example. As the South Node moves into your 12th house, it continues that process of elimination in relation to the unconscious, and focuses our attention on the blind spots that we're wanting to really eliminate, especially where they cause us to self-sabotage. So really focusing on the kinds of habits and patterns that undermine us that we want to eliminate. This is a really great, powerful time to do that. And talking to someone could actually be quite helpful for that. But it's also places a very spiritual emphasis on these kinds of processes. So things like meditation and spiritual practices that you can do, self-reflection in solitude, writing, for example, journal writing, getting more clear about those patterns of self-undoing that we want to be rid of. So I hope that's helpful for you guys too, Scorpio risings, and best of luck for this year. All right, Sagittarius risings. This new moon happens in your 5th house of creativity, children, pleasure, romance, and sex. And there's already an emphasis on expansion in this area for you with Jupiter moving through this house. And the North Node is going to move into this house in July, which will place further emphasis on what you are wanting to create, how you are connecting through romance and pleasure and with your children. And there's a real kind of a desire that leads us there, and also a sense of destiny about being pointed in this direction and what we need to do to heal and to be ourselves more authentically and to assert ourselves more authentically in these areas. There's a more serious emphasis on family, home, roots, property, etc. Ancestry, with Saturn moving through Pisces in your fourth house. And this is asking for some really good boundaries and structures and discipline and maturity in relation to family dynamics. And it could also suggest that there are some new responsibilities in relation to home and property, and the need to be really disciplined about those. But it is also helping to crystallize a vision of the future in Pisces. So that is something that will bring long-term lasting results through a lot of hard work. There should also be an easing up around money issues, hopefully, as Pluto moves out of your second house and into your third house, Aquarius. It's going to be back and forward until late 2024. So there's still some lessons going on in that area, but something's transforming in the area of your talents, your skills, and your self-worth, and how they relate to money and the money that you earn from your talents. And Pluto's going to move into your third house of mind, communication, local community, siblings, and neighbors. And when it moves in there, it's going to focus attention on how you find your power in those areas, and what things that are going to be revealed. Pluto reveals what's hidden to be transformed, that are preventing you from finding your power in those areas. And that's a process that's going to happen over the next 20 years. There's going to be an easing up in relationships as Mars moves out of Gemini at the end of March, and that will shift the tension into your eighth house of psychology, responsibilities and obligations, the esteem of others, what you think other people think about you, your partner's money, and investments, etc. But it's also the house of transformation. So when Mars moves into Cancer, things can feel very, very vulnerable in that area. And that might relate to family matters as well. Remembering that Mars in Cancer is worse than it seems. It seems worse than it is. It is not worse than it seems. Seems worse than it is. It won't last that long. And what it's really asking for is what kinds of courageous, protective action do we need to take to ensure that we are safe and secure in terms of investments, for example, but also in terms of our own psychology, and creating a sense of nurturing for ourselves, even when we think that others think that we're nuts, or that people don't like us, etc. The eighth house can bring up those kinds of fears, and also place that anxiety around what you owe and what obligations you have and what responsibilities, etc. So what kinds of protective actions can you take to create a sense of security around some of those volatile themes? Also, you will have Venus moving through your ninth house of philosophy, higher learning, higher thinking, spirituality, travel overseas, publishing, etc. And when Venus moves through that house, she's going to be placing emphasis on how you show up in relation to those themes, how you express yourself in those themes, and how you connect, how those themes are connecting with your values currently, and how you want them to connect with your values, how you can connect from your heart more. Venus is going to retrograde during that period. She will be retrograding from late August into early September. And when she does, there could be some shifts in direction and a need to shed something that is not working, a stripping away of what isn't working, and then a reorientation and a reset and a reemergence as that follows that period. And it can be a challenging period. If you are traveling during that period, make sure that you check and double check and you're really careful, etc. It's not quite the same as a Mercury retrograde, but it is in your travel house, and it involves reversals, especially if you happen to be traveling for performance, etc. That could be interesting. So yeah, just really connecting from the heart, and being aware of what's needing to be stripped away. So the South Node is going to be moving into your 11th house when it moves out of your 12th in July. When it moves out of your 12th, that should suggest the culmination of some really big karmic lessons at the level of your unconscious that relate to your blind spots and certain habits and patterns that you might have that have been undermining. Hopefully, you've been going through a process of transformation in that area. And when the South Node moves out, you should feel a lot lighter, hopefully. And it's going to move into your 11th house of friends, networks, hopes and dreams, and the allies who help you achieve those things. So the South Node is a place of elimination and decrease. So that could, on one hand, feel like there is less of an emphasis on those themes, friends, networks, etc. But also it is asking what needs to be cut away and shed and transformed in a spiritual, with a more spiritual emphasis potentially. The South Node was always considered to be a place of spiritual growth because it involves losses and cutting away. So what does need to be cut away to improve relationships, to deliver on your hopes and dreams, etc., and what needs a more spiritual consideration and rethinking in relation to those things. So that's it for you guys, Sagittarius rising. Best of luck to you for 2023. And let's move now to Capricorn rising. All right, you guys, straight up, you will be feeling hopefully a big shift in intensity from the place of self, identity, personality, physical vitality, health, and the way you respond to the world when Pluto moves out of your first house and into your second house. This is going to be going back and forward until late 2024, but as it moves out of your first house, it should ease up quite a lot of the intensity, the huge processes you've been going through over the last 10 years or so, 15 years. And then when Pluto moves into your second house of money, talents, skills, self-esteem, and resources, it's going to focus your attention on what needs to be transformed in order for you to find your power in your talents and in self-worth and in relation to how you earn your money, how you can do that in a way where you are really being authentic to yourself, what needs to be transformed, what needs to be destroyed. And that's a long process, again, that's going to happen over the next 20 years. But as Pluto moves in, it's going to highlight some of those issues and show us where transformation is wanted. Basically, there's a more serious emphasis this year for you and for the next couple of years with Saturn in your third house of mind, communication, community, siblings, and neighbors. So Saturn is asking for healthy boundaries, good structures, discipline, routine, maturity, and wisdom in relation to those things. So in thinking about communication, how do you want to communicate your vision and working out ways to do that in a really structured way? Saturn is actually going to help do that, help you do that. It can feel a little bit challenging and feel like communication is more difficult. It flows less easily perhaps, and you have to work on it a bit more. But the result of that is that it produces really lasting results in whatever area of life it touches. So as it moves through your communication house, it's going to really provide some solid structures for communication, also for learning. It's foundational learning in the third house. So you might be learning new skills. This is a fantastic transit for learning new skills. There's a continued emphasis on home and family and parents, ancestry, roots, property, etc., with Jupiter moving through your fourth house. And then in July, the North Node is going to move there too, which is going to continue to place the emphasis. This is where the most important focus is. There's a lessening of emphasis in career, or a focus on what needs to be cut away in career. What isn't working there, what needs to be reduced or decreased or eliminated entirely, and how can you take a more possibly a more spiritual approach in those processes of elimination, because the emphasis is really on family this year. and for the next little while. There is a continued emphasis on innovation, breakthroughs, and change in creativity, children, pleasure, sex, romance. And Jupiter is going to move into that house, your fifth house, from late May. And that will continue to expand those themes. So it should be a very enjoyable period of time for you, focusing on those kinds of things: creativity, pleasure, joy, children, and romance, etc. There should be an easing up in relation to the slog of day-to-day work and health issues as Mars moves out of your sixth house at the end of March, but it's going to move into your seventh house of relationships. So there could be some challenges and conflicts in relationships that seem worse than they are. The thing that you want to be thinking about, as I've said with everyone, is what kinds of protective actions could you take in defense of something that is vulnerable and needing protection, something that needs to be safe, feel safe in the realm of relationship. It's courageous, heroic, active, and protective. That's the best kinds of actions for Mars in Cancer. But it does often coincide with cuttings that happen in that realm. So, but it seems worse than it is. So it is not going to last forever. Hang in there, and yeah, it'll be okay. There's also going to be a major focus with Venus moving through Leo in your eighth house from June until October, on how you can express yourself, how you connect from the heart in relation to your own psychology. And so this could be a really great time to see a counselor or a psychologist to really focus on some deep themes around karmic entanglements in relationships, and the esteem of others, what the anxieties about what other people think of you, the partner's money, your partner's money, other investments, etc., what you owe, what other people owe you. Some of those things are going to be highlighted. The anxiety around those things could be highlighted when Venus goes retrograde from late August until early September. And there's going to be a stripping away of something, a shedding, a process of shedding, and then of reversals, and then a reorientation, and eventually a reemergence that should bring that area and those themes in life into a kind of a shiny new rebirth. So there's also going to be an easing up of maybe some big lessons that have been underway, and some losses maybe, or a decrease in emphasis on friendships, networks, and allies. As the South Node moves out of your 11th house and into your 10th house, it focuses on, as I already mentioned, on decreasing what's not working so well in career. But when it moves out of your 11th house, there should be a lightening up and definitely an easing of some of the lessons in that area of life. So Capricorn risings, I hope that is helpful for you, and happy 2023 astrological new year. Okay, so now we're looking at Aquarius rising. Now for you guys, Pluto is about to move out of your 12th house, the house related to the unconscious, blind spots, our the habits and patterns where we can self-sabotage. And so Pluto has been in this area transforming that part of your psyche for the last sort of 15 years. And it is coming to the culminating point in those lessons. I mean, that continues back and forward until late 2024. But as Pluto moves out of Capricorn and into Aquarius on March 23, it's going to give you a feel of transformation and liberation from some of the work that you've been doing there, and really focus attention on what is wanting to be transformed at the level of self, identity, vitality, health, personality, and how we face the world, how we meet the world, and how we do so by being really, truly authentic to ourselves, expressing ourselves in a way where we are allowing our freaky idiosyncratic, eccentric selves to really be expressed, and that we find power through the process of doing that. That is also a long process. It'll go on for 20 years. Pluto reveals what's hidden. So reveals what's hidden, also destroys what is blocking our power, and allows us to transform that, whatever's dying off in order to find our power. So there are things that could be highlighted. There is a more serious focus on money with Saturn in Pisces in your second house. And that is asking for really good boundaries, structures, processes for working with money, and also for developing the skills and talents that are going to allow you to make an income from your abilities. It also is the house associated with self-worth. So with Saturn in Pisces here, it can feel like a weight on self-worth. And so again, it's asking for practices, rituals, and routines that support the growth and the development of self-worth, that allow you to realize and achieve a vision, and develop maturity and wisdom in these areas. So that's actually really great, but it can feel a little bit hard, because it's a more heavy energy in relation to self-worth, but it's about developing good self-worth that is, based on maturity and discipline and routines. The new moon is happening in your third house of mind, communication, community, siblings, and neighbors. It's the house of the goddess, so it is also associated with the sacred in the everyday, and there is an expansion happening in this area that's already been underway, and that's going to continue, and some healing that's happening here as well, about asserting yourself in community, about how you communicate how you communicate in the world, basically. And this emphasis is going to change a little bit as Jupiter moves into your fourth house of family on May 17th, but the North Node is going to move into this house in July. And that will place more emphasis. This is where you are really developing some mastery, or it's where the emphasis is focused in a very fated way. This is where the eclipses will be happening, the North Node eclipses. So the expansion of things happening in these areas will continue. As Jupiter moves into your fourth house of family, home, property, ancestry, and roots, this continuing process of change and innovation that's already underway is going to continue to be expanded as Jupiter moves in there, enlarging all of these themes and bringing some really positive outcomes, I would suggest, in relation to these things, and maybe the recognition of what has been evolving over the last couple of years in this area. There should be an easing up of tensions and maybe conflict or challenges in relation to children, creativity, sex, pleasure, and romance. When Mars moves out of your fifth house, and then it moves into your sixth house of work, routines, and health issues. So there could be some challenges that come up from late March until May that seem worse than they are. Again, the question is, what actions do you need to take in order to protect your health, in order to make sure that your daily routines are nurturing and safe, and that you are, that you're able to be protected and safe in those contexts when there are challenges present, basically. So taking protective action, being courageous about taking action to nurture, nourish, protect, and secure. There is also going to be a major emphasis on relationships for you from June until October, with Venus moving through Leo in your seventh house. Now, this is really going to focus your attention on how you express yourself in relationships, how you connect from the heart in relationships, and then also what needs to be shed, what layers need to be stripped away in this area in order for you to really find, to experience relationships in a way where there is a sense of fairness and justice and self-expression and heart-connected energy. And that process of stripping away can feel quite difficult. That will be from late August until early September, but the process in entirety is one of really kind of a rejuvenation and a recalibration of the feminine qualities of relationship, how we are receptive to relationship and how we connect from the heart, in Leo, obviously. So the South Node for you is moving out of the 10th house. So again, where there may have been a decrease in opportunities at the level of career, that should ease up from July. And the South Node moves then into the 9th house, which is associated with travel, with higher learning, higher thinking, philosophy, spirituality, publishing, etc. So with the South Node there, that is also focusing our attention on what needs to be cut away. What do we need to shed or to release or eliminate in these areas in order for them to thrive? And also it places a more spiritual emphasis on those themes, because in the Vedic system, wherever there is a loss, it is the thing that creates spiritual growth. We don't grow spiritually through the fabulous things that happen to us. We grow spiritually through the things that are challenging and where there's loss and some form of elimination, basically. So focusing on those kinds of themes, what do you want to release, and where do you want to make a more spiritual focus on learning, on philosophy, travel, etc. So I hope that is helpful for you, Aquarius risings, and let's now go to Pisces. All right, Pisces rising. For you guys, you have Saturn just moving into your first house of self, identity, health, vitality, the intuitive way that you respond to the world, how you meet the world, etc. Now, with Saturn in Pisces in the first house, this can feel at some level like there's some constraints or limitations on you personally and maybe on your health. But Saturn is also creating the opportunity for you to develop some really healthy structures, routines, boundaries that allow you to be yourself and to materialize the vision of who you want to be in the world over the next 2.5 years. So really working on good routines to develop maturity. Maturity and wisdom, that is what Saturn is all about, through some difficult lessons, but really using that Saturnian energy to create good structures and routines is a fantastic way to grow into who you want to be during this period. The new moon's happening in your second house of money, talents, resources, and self-worth, and there's already an expansion happening in this area with Jupiter there, which will continue, and a healing emphasis as well. And then when the North Node moves into your second house in July, there's a continuing emphasis on growing and asserting your talents and your skills, and working with your resources and taking action to develop your resources, etc. There's also a continuing emphasis on communication, mind, foundational learning, community, your place in community, your sense of the sacred in the everyday, and neighbors and siblings, with Uranus in Taurus in the third house, shaking things up and bringing innovation and change in this area. Venus is sweetening this area at the moment, and the North Node is amplifying it. The North Node, as I mentioned, will move out of Taurus and into Aries, but then Jupiter will move into Taurus, really from May. All of those planets I just mentioned and the North Node will be in Taurus, really expanding concepts and themes of community and communication, and where you find value and how you want to expand that and change that and innovate and find liberation through communication, through community, etc. There should be an easing up of tensions and conflict and challenges at the level of family, home, property, roots, and ancestry. But Mars is going to move into your fifth house of Cancer, which could bring some challenges to topics like children, creativity, romance, sex, etc. from late March until May. Things are always seeming worse than they are when Mars is in Cancer, so keep that in mind. And as with everyone else, the question is, what kinds of protective actions can you take to ensure the safety of your children, or the safe space in which to be creative, or to ensure that you are nurtured in and safe in romantic encounters, sexual experiences, etc. But it really places emphasis on that area and asks, yeah, what kind of action do I need to take here? What are the challenges? What challenges are showing up here? And where are they asking for action? What kind of action are they asking for? There's going to be a really strong emphasis for you guys on work and daily routines and health issues when Venus moves through Leo in your 6th house from August until, no, I beg your pardon, from June until October. She'll be retrograde from late August until early September. When she's retrograde, that could bring about some reversals in work and health issues. And they could feel quite challenging. They're asking for us to strip away, to shed something that isn't working in those areas, and to reorient, reset, and eventually re-emerge renewed. And one of the things to keep in mind is connecting from the heart, self-expression, finding kind of creative ways to enliven your daily routines, and that connect your daily routines to your values, basically, because Venus is associated with values and with beauty and with harmonizing things that aren't working, or that are different, basically. So that's going to place a lot of emphasis on those kinds of themes for you when Venus moves through Leo. There could be an easing up of intensity around, or a culmination of lessons, I should say, that you've been experiencing or going through for the last sort of 18 months or 15 months at this stage, when the South Node moves out of Scorpio in your 9th house in July. And that may have showed up as some losses or some decrease in travel, inability to travel, or the 9th house rules higher thinking, higher education, publishing, spirituality, etc., the law. So there may have been some issues that have been difficult to get traction with in relation to those themes during this period. And when the South Node moves out, there's a culmination of learning that can feel like a transformation and can feel empowering when the South Node moves out of that house. It's going to move into your 8th house, though, of psychology, of anxiety about what other people think of us, of other people's money, of obligations and responsibilities, and karmic entanglements. So this would be a great time to see a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist, etc., because the South Node rules the elimination of things, and this house is about anxiety, and it is about psychological patterns or beliefs that are entrained within or entangled up in karmic dynamics. So this is a really powerful time actually to transform some of those and to release some old karma, and really learn some really big lessons that are going to be very, very empowering for you in relationships, and just how you are able to move through the world and how you're able to relate to others. Then Pluto moving out of your 11th house, friends, networks, and allies, that may have been placing some intensity, and you would have been experiencing some major transformations in those areas. Your hopes and dreams, your friends and networks, and the allies who support you to realize your dreams. Pluto is moving out of this house. It's going to be going backwards and forwards until the end of 2024. So there's still some learning that is culminating during this period, but when it moves out on March 23rd, you should feel some real kind of release and a feeling of transformation and empowerment in relation to those topics. And Pluto is going to move into your 12th house. Now, in your 12th house, it is going to focus on what is buried deep in your subconscious that needs to be surfaced, to be looked at, to be transformed in order for you to find your power. The 12th house is associated with blind spots, with patterns and habits of self-undoing and self-sabotage. But it's also associated with the things that we develop in solitude, in utero, so to speak, that are creative and that we birth into the world after a period of quiet, reflection and creativity. So as Pluto moves here, it could really focus your energy towards really kind of developing these things that you would like to bring forward into the world that require some transformation and require you to really be authentically yourself, and to trust the vision that you have that you want to bring into the world. And Pluto will help you find your power through that. So that is actually really exciting, I think, for you guys, Pisces rising. And that brings me to the end. I hope that these have been in some way helpful. It's always such a marathon to get through them, and yeah, lots of glitches, but hopefully some helpful info. And wishing you guys the very best for 2023 astrological new year and for the whole year. And I hope it is profoundly enriching, rewarding, transformative, and abundant for you all. Much love, my beautiful friends, and speak soon.